Whatever. We'll introduce Charity.
She came
Good
in
evening,
last
ladies
time like
and
this.
gentlemen, and welcome to Keep the Mic On. This is our second week on YouTube. So, hey, YouTube. I am
Hi,
simply
YouTube.
Sherry. I am simply Sherry, and we are a collection of women identifying poets and writers and in the Washington, D.C. area who, since the beginning of the quarantine, has been online doing our conversational interview programs with artists from all genres. My week is called From Behind the Microphone. And if you're on YouTube, last week was my week. So there's our first video. This week, I'm going to really kick it quickly to one of my co-hosts, the Girl Genius.
Hey y'all, quick intro. I'm Girl Genius. My week is the first week of the month, and I do Let's Talk About the Book, it's going to be talk about more things in the book, but it's the segment's called Let's Talk About the Book. Pick an author, pick their brain about their writing process, how they pull their projects together, where they get their idea from, all that other good, fun stuff. Following my week is generally our other host, who should be here shortly. That is Charity Blackwell. She is Art Plus Therapy. So she talks to people who are using their art as a form of healing for either for themselves or others. She will be joining us again shortly, but I am super excited about this week, as I am for almost every week. Actually, for every week, not even almost, every week. We've been told before that this show is like a masterclass on all things, and I am super, super excited. So now what I am going to do is pass it over to our host for this week, so she can tell you who we have on this evening. So right now, I'm going to give it to KaNikki J.
Thank you very much for your heightness. It's beautiful. Welcome, people from on YouTube. Welcome on Facebook. I am super duper excited and surprised actually that we actually got this famous person to come on here and don't be shy and just be here with us. It's amazing. You get to know people, and I didn't know you when you started, but we go back almost 2 decades now, right? So you get to see people, and then one day you look up and he's like, is that Sekou on TV? Is that him? That is Sekou. What's happening? Like what's going on? So basically that's what happened. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. I met this brother in Washington, D.C. when I was just a wee poet, just getting started, finding out what spoken word was after I watched Love Jones and Child, and I was looking for it and found the place. And then I met you at Mango's. I don't know if you remember.
Oh, it was Mango.
Okay. At Mango's, yep. And I was like, who is this amazing person?
That was the spot.
Yeah, that was the spot. The spot. I was just sending him a photo that I had taken of him, but before I even really knew who you were, I think. And I was like, hey, I took this picture. I had seen Love Jones, so I was like, how can I be a poet and be a photographer at the same time? You know what I'm saying? I was trying to get my Nina Mosley on, but Darius Love on, trying to get them both on at the same time. That's what happened. So anyway, welcome to my segment. I will go off on a tangent. I am KaNikki Jakarta. I am happily serving a 3-year term as the first Black poet laureate of Alexandria, Virginia, and loving it. Yes, that's what I'm saying. So my platform is interview poets who have platforms for the arts, those poets who know how to organize, those poets who build platforms so that other poets can get on and that type of thing. Any type of artist platform, I like to bring that to the forefront. So like Sherry always says, poets are people too, and a lot of times we don't get to talk to them personally. We just see their art, and there's a story behind how this person got started. So I'm gonna read this bio, but let me say, well, know the person. I was reading a little bit of the bio to my mom today. Mama, get on. I hope my mom watching. Hey mom, if you watching, hey mom. Okay, all right. This person that we have on tonight, his name is Sekou Andrews. He is the CEO of Sekou World Incorporated and one of the most successful spoken word poets in the world. On any given day, this school teacher turned artist and entrepreneur who built a 7-figure company on poetry can be found keynoting at a Fortune 500 company, inspiring thousands at concerts, or performing for Barack Obama in Oprah's backyard. His accomplishments include 2 National Poetry Slam championships, 2 National Poetry Tours, 2 Independent Music Awards, 3 Helen Hayes Awards, and the most Just Plain Folks Music Awards in history, the 2020 ABA Entrepreneur of the Year Award, and the first Best Spoken Word Album Grammy nomination for a poet in 30 years. Insert only losing to
Michelle Obama,
the first lady, our first lady that we always gonna claim,
That's
Michelle
right.
Obama.
Mhm.
Yes, Sekou is the creator of Poetic Voice, a cutting-edge speaking experience that seamlessly fuses inspirational speaking with spoken words like Hamilton meets TED Talk. His keynotes are in high demand from the global organization. He has been featured, y'all, on ABC, CBS, HBO, MTV, BET, and Forbes has called him the polymath and the de facto poet laureate corporate America. He also teaches his rock star secrets to public speakers through his Stage Might speaker training system. Sekou does more than inspire us with his story. He inspires us with our story. So y'all give it up from wherever y'all are for the awesome and amazing Sekou Andrews. He's gonna open up with a piece. And yay.
What up, what up, what up, what up, Poets and Platform. Shout out to KaNikki, shout out to Sherry and Girl Genius for having me on. I appreciate everybody. My name is Sekou Andrews, used to be known as Sekou the Misfit back in my KaNikki 13 days. And I always like to start off by shouting out where I come from. You know, I represent the sanitarium. Sanitarium is the place where crazy people go to get sane. And that's what the spoken word poetry does for me, for us, for our mental health, helps us to deal and find a little bit of sanity in this world. So if you had you a crazy day, if you had you a crazy night, if you had you a crazy life, I want y'all to holler back with the universal call of the sanitarium. Cuckoo. Somebody saying it? Are y'all saying it out there? Somebody type it in. Cuckoo in the chat. There you go. And let's see. I told KaNikki that I'm feeling a little off today. Just feeling a little under the weather. So, you know, I truly mean that when I say that this poetry is part of my health. I know for y'all spoken word lovers out there, we consider this part of our well-being. And so I'm gonna do some poetry to just heal me today. I'm always trying to figure out what piece to start off with, that, you know, what's current events or what are people feeling. But right now I'm just gonna do a piece that I feel like doing because it'll help me raise my energy and help me feel better. This is a piece that I wrote. It's a love piece. My love pieces are some of my favorite writing, some of the writing I'm most proud of. And this is a piece that I wrote. This is the very first poem that I wrote for my wife and performed for her on the night that I proposed to her on stage in front of like 350 people after a 35-minute love set. And this is a piece that I wrote for her called Straight R&B. Straight R&B, straight R&B, straight R&B. You know how when you fall in love with somebody and all their habits that once annoyed you become cute and adorable and make you love that person even more? Yeah, well, I don't. The annoying stuff that she does, it ain't cute. It's just annoying. I don't know what line I was supposed to be in when they were handing that out. With me, I don't have that kind of love. Me, I have that. I hate when you leave the tops off of every container you open and yet always a kiss goodnight kind of love. And the worst is when I'm headed out for a run and discover that my iPod check how long ago this poem was, that my iPod is dead and the only one charged is hers, because hers has only one long playlist filled to capacity with R&B slow jams. The hell? I can't work out to this. Who jogs to Jodeci? Look, you know what? Honestly, I remember playing a music-themed board game one day, and my opponent drew a card that asked, if you were running a marathon and could listen to only one song for the entire run, what song would you choose? And on that day, I learned that a playlist is nothing to play with. And the final mile of my marathon is no place for Fantasia. So please understand the fact that I actually ran 5 miles that day, pumped up on R&B slow jams, is all the proof I need that she is the one for me. She has got me running to R&B. And listen, it's not that I'm prejudiced against R&B or anything. Some of my best friends are Blackstreet, but I heard someone explain it perfectly once. R&B is just too damn obvious. Shawty, what you think? Let me buy you a drink. I got money in the bank. We in the bed like, oh, 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 oh. We in the bed like, oh, oh, oh. You know what? Honestly, but I see, the thing is, I realize now that it's okay. The ooh, ooh, because sometimes you don't need multi-layered melodies and labyrinth lyrics, poets. Sometimes you don't want to be all neo soul smooth or hip hop hard. Sometimes you just want to rip off your shirt in the middle of the show, drop down to your knees and say, nah, baby, nah, baby, nah, baby, nah, and finish it off with a perfectly calm, hoo, hoo, hoo. And now I want to take off my shirt on stage for her, but I don't really have an R&B body yet. I got more of a classical cellist body. You know, not that cellists are unsexy, but you never see them with their shirt off on stage, right? And now I want to make a day trip to heaven to give God a pound and tell him I am eternally grateful that she finds me funny, because her laugh, oh, it is my favorite thing. And her smile is my masterpiece. So I have to admit, when we kiss, I peek. No, I do. I be peeking just to see her lips crescent as mine pull away. I asked her why she smiles so when we kiss one day, and she looked at me quizzically and said, because you make me happy. Because you make me happy. Because you make me happy. How wonderfully simple this R&B of hers is. No belabored messages or Byzantine metaphors like we poets do. Just a beautiful melody and a simple, accessible hook like happy. And that's new for me, because new is the new used to for me. See, I love now different than I used to. You see, I used to want to serenade her with a boombox outside her apartment till the neighbors shouted from their windows and the cops were called. Now I just want to churn out slow jams with her inside her apartment till the neighbors bang on the walls and the fire department is called, and we catch an arson charge from harnessing our heat by laying kindling beneath combustible bed sheets, so that each time we sweat kerosene from dilated pores, we cinder each other to the core, collapsing onto sheets that still spasm, watching our phoenix rise toward the dangling wires of the smoke detector above our head, from which we were wise enough to remove the batteries. See, sometimes there are no alarms that go off, no trumpets that blare or angels that sing to signify the arrival of the one, because sometimes the one ain't actually the one. Yeah, see, I've called someone the one before and been wrong twice before. So to be accurate, she is the 3, and 3 is the magic number. She is my rule of 3 and my 3 squares a day, the charm in my third time who stole my heart like third base, the 3 apples of my third eye that has me looking past love at first sight, because this time I want love at last sight. love at last kiss, love at 112th fight, love at dying wish, on that 30,000th night, on that 26th mile that I'm certain I'll reach, because she has got me running to R and B. She's got me running to R and B. And I know I'm in this one for the long haul, because her thighs alone are a full-time, lifetime commitment. Her curves are a full-time project, and I am powerless against her butterfly effect. See, there is a spot on her back that when kissed will make a monarch flutter in her stomach, which makes a volcano erupt in China, which alters the course of our future forever. And my lips spent last Saturday mining the small of her back, searching out that spot for hours, engaging her core like crunches, leaving her sore like lunges, reading the goosebumped braille of her skin's nonfiction and bookmarking my favorite spots. She has always been a page turner, but tonight I tear her from the page, place her on my tongue, and bring her to my stage. For she is not just poetry, nah, she is spoken word. She is meant to be performed. More than muse, she is my ghostwriter. I know I take the credit, but she writes all my best parts. So I'm just enjoying the crescendo. She is the pitch change at the end of the chorus, the curtains pulled back to reveal the full gospel choir, the bridge climaxing into the high note that I can always count on coming. She is the irrefutable evidence of God's presence. The 5'7" hazel-eyed proof that heaven is not always something we go to. Sometimes it comes to us. And I know this to be true because on March 2nd, 1970, don't worry about it, God got the most incredible song stuck in his head. And 2 years ago, I woke up from the dead, heard God passing me, singing that high note, and I have been singing her ever since. So if for this marathon of life, there is only one song I can choose, then it is no longer possible for me to be confused. She is my high note. I am singing on cue. She is my fantasy and she is my truth. She is my soul music and my soul food. She is my new age and my old school. She is my rhythm and she is my blues. She is my and she is just too damn obvious. So my finish line is finally clear. She is the red dot on the map of my destiny that says, stop running, baby. You are here. Cuckoo!
Yes, I bow to you. I would curtsy, but I can't because I on the camera. So I just bow. I bow. That is amazing. How many pages of poem is that? That's got to be a book. That's got to be one book of poetry by itself.
So what's funny about that is that's actually the short version.
Wow.
You know, it was my first piece. It was my first piece. I had a lot to say. And it actually ended up being one of my favorite pieces that I've written for her. You know, it was the beginning, right? That honeymoon phase, you know, you lit up with love. And this set where I proposed, it was 3 pieces. There were all these massive long pieces. The first one was maybe like 7 minutes. You actually probably heard that one. Remember the one called If Not That? Where I talk about, oh, you got to have a big ass. Remember that one? And
yeah,
like, you know, and if you don't have that, then you got to have love. And if not, you don't have that, then you got to have. And so like, that was like a what do I want after my breakup kind of piece. Right. And then this one, Straight R&B, was like a 15-minute long piece that I wrote for her. That was basically like, this is what, you know, where I am now kind of. And then the last piece I performed, I basically threw the audience off because I was like, at the very beginning, I was like, yo, you know, I know y'all ladies, because it was her birthday. I disguised the proposal in a birthday celebration for her. So that way, that was my secret way of getting everybody there without everybody thinking that it was going to be a proposal. So I threw the audience off. I was like, I know y'all ladies think that I'm going, this is not a proposal poem. Everybody relax. I'm not going to be dropping down to one knee. I'm not going to be pulling out no ring. Everybody just relax. And everybody was cracking up because they were laughing at themselves because they totally acknowledged that they felt that energy. And then at the end, and as I finished the poem, I was like, well, I guess I am going to be dropping down to one knee, and I guess I am going to be pulling out a ring, and everybody just lit up. It was crazy.
Wow. Does anybody have this? Well, how many years ago was this?
This was in 2011 or 12? 2011.
2011.
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
So now that you have found love, does it now make you a love poet?
I've always been a love poet.
You've always been I love that.
I've always like, honestly, that's why I said I'm gonna start this set off with a piece that I like, because my love poems have always been some of my favorite to write. They've always been some of my favorite pieces. They've always been my hits, my singles. Like, people remember me for Dumb Shit. They remember me for Jeep Grand Cherokee. They remember me for all these like pieces that were like my famous love poems. So yeah, love has always been one of the easier things for me to write. Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, when you were talking in the beginning, you were saying that when we met you, you were Sekou the Misfit. So I want to know, is Sekou your birth name, and why the stage name Sekou the Misfit?
Yeah, Sekou is the birth name. Sekou means warrior or learned, and my middle name means black. So Sekou basically means black warrior or fighter for blacks. But we had Sekou Sundiata. We had the #1 salsa dancer in the world or something was this dude in South America named Sekou. Like, there was an actor named Sekou. So I remember I did a show one time I was touring Miami, and I was doing a show, and apparently Sekou Sundiata, for those of y'all that know, he's another iconic sort of famous, one of the elder poets, and he was in Miami at the same time, and some people showed up to my show thinking that they were going to see Sekou Sundiata, and it just made me feel like I don't own the name Sekou, right, in spoken word for me to be just the one name artist. And so I chose Sekou the Misfit years before, because actually in college, right at the end of college, because I was I was in hip hop. I came to poetry through hip hop, and hip hop, you always want to have a stage name, and you always want to have something that's cool. And everybody was like, everybody was like, why don't you just use Sekou? Like, your name is not Dave. Like, Sekou's a cool name, But for me, because it was my name, it felt like Dave. It felt like it was just a common name. It didn't feel cool. So I threw the Misfit on, because that was really around the time that I was really sort of acknowledging my pride and sort of celebrating my desire to just be different, to not fit in, and not worry about having to fit the stereotype that hip hop was being. I was more De La Soul. I was more Tribe Called Quest, Native Tongues, so the Misfit kind of fit into that theme. So it carried on. And then after it carried on into my poetry. But then after Sekou Sundiata passed, I felt like it was the passing of the Sekou torch. And it was also right around the time that I was, getting ready to get married. And I was thinking about my last name a lot more. I was thinking about my father had passed away, and like, this was our lineage. And I was thinking about my wife taking on our name. And when we have a kid, they'll have the name. So I found myself wanting to reclaim my last name, even though it was just Andrews, the slave name, but, but I still wanted to sort of reclaim it as part of my heritage and my legacy. So that was the transition when I finally let the Misfit go. I went through my Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson phase. You know what I'm saying? I was Sekou the Misfit Andrews for a minute. You know what I mean? I completely let it go. But then I think around 2011 is actually when I just moved on to Andrews completely.
Yep, got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, gotta know the because my name's KaNikki. I mean, hey, I'm just gonna use it because
right.
KaNikki.
Own it.
You know what I mean? Although, there is somebody, KaNikki J, that's on Instagram, and I started following them because I'm like, why is your name my name? You know,
why you all up in my name?
KaNikki J. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm like this. So I gotta be KaNikki_J because somebody already did that.
And everybody's telling me like now they're like, dude, you should just be Sekou, you know. But I don't know. I feel like there are more and more Sekous out there, and so I just found myself going in this age of, you know, search terms and wanting to differentiate yourself and so forth. I was like, you got to really be Madonna if you just gonna claim Madonna. You know what I mean? Like you got to be that big where the whole world knows you as that. You know.
The whole world do know you as you are Sekou. People. Wait, hold on. I'm gonna do a tester right fast. I'm about to do something in Google. Sekou, just Sekou and see what comes up.
Okay, see what comes up. You froze.
And I won't try to pronounce his name.
What happened?
Our experiment, and I guess because I just was on your website, it came right to your website.
That's it. What happened?
You froze for a moment, so I just slid in, coming back out.
Is she still frozen? She might still be frozen.
Frozen. She is still frozen.
I'm still frozen.
It's something about KaNikki interviewing me that she just likes to drop out every few times, you know.
I'm just gonna say
next time we're gonna be in person.
That's right.
Because next time we're gonna be in person, and I bet you we won't freeze.
I don't know. I think we should just.
How about that?
I think when we in person, we should just like time it and freeze, just to keep the tradition going, you know.
And freeze.
Right.
Like freeze and freeze. I'm with that. So listen, you brought up your dad.
Yeah.
So I did a little bit of researching online and read a whole bunch of stuff about you and found this information about you. I don't know where I found it. Anyway, so I found it that I saw that you discovered a 7-page letter that your father had wrote you when you were being born.
7-page
poem. 7-page poem.
Mm-hmm.
7-page poem about you. So he's writing poetry about you when you were born, right? Yeah. After you read it, did you feel like affirmed in who you are, or did it inspire you like to live into those pages?
It was very affirming. As a matter of fact, I was looking at my mom like, do you know what I do? How did you not let me know this? You know what I mean? Like, how am I just now discovering this? But it felt, I mean, to discover that I was, you know, no, I'm not going to say literally, but metaphorically born through poetry. Mm-hmm. Because the 7-page piece was time stamped. You know, it would be like 10:43 a.m. and then it would be a few stanzas, and then 11:15 and he's kicking now, and so and 12:30 the wife is breathing, she's screaming for the doctor. It was like, and it was classic because it was all in my dad's like classic 70s blaxploitation like jive turkey talk. You know what I mean? So it was like right on, young brother. So I loved it. Like it just so represented him, and it was just dope to hear like him talking about my mom and talking about the birth process and his dreams for me and all of that as I was being born into a poem. And then for me to grow up years later and become a full-time poet it was powerful.
Yeah, that's amazing. So this is what I want to know. So you were a teacher, right?
Yeah.
First, let me ask, what did you teach?
I taught 5th grade, so it was all subjects. Yeah. 5th
grade. So you were in there with the children.
Yeah. I was South Central LA with the kids.
So you were as a teacher, right? So did you take some of your teaching and I'm trying to learn you something, your teaching background, to bring it over to like your poetry? Like were you trying to like teach it through a message?
You mean once I stopped teaching?
Once you stopped teaching, did you take some of that? Because you're in the classroom with 5th years.
Oh, right.
5th graders, right? So you're in the classroom and you have to teach. Your whole role is to be a teacher. Right. So did you take that and bring that to poetry, or did you take your acting skill and bring that to poetry?
Well, I think formally you saw much more of my performance in my spoken word, because I came to it through songwriting, through lyric writing, and then through poetry. And I think the through hip hop and performance on stage and through acting. And so when you saw my performances back in the day when I was first coming up on the scene, I mean, you could probably see it even right now, just on the one that I just did. I'm a very animated, performance heavy poet, and so I use my entire instrument like an actor does. And that, I think, that definitely permeated in a lot of my original work. The teaching, I think, came in later because, as you heard, I have a speaker training program, and then even in my work in business, right, as a keynote speaker, there's always an educational component. So if I'm going and I'm speaking to cybersecurity executives or fintech folks or healthcare folks or whatever, they're coming to be inspired, but they're also coming to learn something. They want to have some clear takeaways that are actionable for them. So I had to really make sure that I brought out my educator in my keynoting now, and also in my speaker training program. I'm doing one-on-one coaching with a CEO. That's me back in the classroom. I'm doing, I'm creating an online course, my Stage Fright to Stage Might course, which is an online speaker training course. That's me creating curriculum, and going back to my educational roots, et cetera, et cetera. So it definitely has shown up more on the back end, whereas the performance showed up immediately.
Gotcha. So at what point, as a teacher or an actor or a slam champion, did you decide, like, I'm trying to build a platform, not just trying to be, because it's different on the platform side. I'm trying to build a platform and not just be a slam champion, not just trying to be a poet, not just trying to do spoken word or act. I want to be the platform.
Yeah. I was always part artist, part entrepreneur. Even back in middle school when I first discovered hip hop, and formed a little band with some MCs and musicians, and they'd be the ones playing around with the helicopter sounds on the synthesizer, and I'd be like, dude, we need to rehearse. Like, let's record something. Let's get it out there. You know what I mean? Like, I always had a sense of the end game and the end product. And I always had a lot more focus than I think a lot of artists have. That's one of the challenges with artists is, they're like the kid that wants to do karate one week and ballet the next week and gymnastics the next week. Like, artists are typically very like that creative energy. It just has you jumping around. And so I always had a lot more follow through. Like, I'm gonna stay focused on this, and I'm gonna take this all the way to the end. And if I let it go and it doesn't work, it's gonna be because it didn't work, not just because I got distracted with something else. So I credit that with a lot of the success that I've had in business. But as I began to transition from hip hop to spoken word, and I sort of fell in love with spoken word accidentally, which was not the plan. I was going to open mics to build a fan base for my hip hop so I could get signed to a record deal, and then I kind of accidentally fell in love with spoken word. And I loved the fact that people just appreciated you just for the words. You don't have to worry about the beat and the hook and the guest features and all the politics. And did you say bitch, hoe, shoot 'em, murder, enough, and, all that bullshit. So I found myself just really wanting to do something with this. But then it was like, but what, right? The problem was poets, we don't have a lot of models. And certainly we didn't back when I was coming up. We didn't have models for what a successful spoken word poet looks like. We had models for, you leaving it and going and quitting it and doing, getting a job somewhere else. But the trajectory was short, right? It was you start, maybe, let's say if you're a full-time poet, you quit your job, you start doing the clubs and the cafes locally, doing some features, you selling your product there. Back then it was chapbooks and CDs, right? And then you graduate to doing national shows and maybe international shows, same thing, you moving your product. And then maybe you graduate to doing colleges, and now the checks get bigger. And the audiences sometimes get bigger, sometimes they got crappier. But you could always count on getting that $500,000, $1,500, maybe $2,000 check from a college, and then that was it.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of it. Like that. After that, you tapped out, right? You either stayed on the road doing colleges, which some folks do, and they love it, right? Or you quit and you went to go get a job, or you taught, or you wrote books, or you used your spoken word skills writing for something else. You know, he became a playwright or writing for a TV show or something like that. And I just felt like that was a shame. I was like, why can't poets have a trajectory like comedians or like singers, where we can stay on the stage and take it all the way to massive success? Why do we have to sort of stop after the local college scene, you know? So that really became a big part of the mission and purpose that I realized that I was put on this planet for. Is I really wanted to sort of create a more commercially viable model for spoken word and help to pioneer a more commercially viable industry for spoken word, so that young poets can actually make a purposeful and a profitable living off of their art. And that when they tell a parent, I want to be a spoken word poet when they grow up, the parent doesn't hear, I want to be broke.
Right.
You know, the parent, at least, I mean, there's some parents that are like, if you tell them you want to be a comedian or a singer, they're going to be like, you're crazy, you're going to be broke, go be a doctor. But at least that parent has an understanding of how far a comedian or a singer or a dancer can take it. They watch TV shows, they watch comedy shows, they watch, you know what I mean? They go to dance recitals, they know what a professional is. Nobody knows what a professional poet looks like. And I didn't know what it looked like when I was coming up. So I was like, well, I guess I gotta create it.
Right. So then is that when you teamed up with because I know you and Steve, what's his last name? Connell. Yeah, Steve Connell. You guys were out doing big things together. And then is that like when you teamed up with him first, or did you start the Poetic Voice then?
So my partnership with Steve really came out of he had moved back here from New York. He had been out in New York doing some acting and improv stuff and so forth. And he came back out here. I had been building my name up on the scene at the Poetry Lounge in LA and just on the local LA scene. And Steve came back here. He did the lounge for the first time. And I remember, I think it was my homegirl Jasmine that came out. I had stepped away. They were like, oh, introducing, you know, next up to the mic, Steve Connell. And I was like, I don't know this dude. I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna talk to my boy, Shihan or whatever. And then afterwards, like, it was this roaring applause and feet stomping, and he murdered it, right? And my girl Jasmine ran in and was like, oh my God, you just missed it. This dude, Steve, just murdered it. And so I had my eye on him at that point. And what I loved about him was that he had the same kind of performance energy as I do. You know, he was a big performer, and I just loved his pen. His pen was sick to me. His performance was sick. So we just started vibing, and then we ended up making some of the same slam teams. And so then when I won the National Poetry Slam Championship the first time, the solo, he was on my team along with Talam and Bridget Gray. And then when I was on the next year, when we won as a team, he was on that team. He was captain of that team, actually. And then we started doing some tours together, right? And he had a couple of opportunities, and we were just like the first people that we looked out for. So when we had the Underground Poets Railroad tour and the Declare Yourself tour, he was the first one on those. And when they were like, yo, we want to start adding poets, you know, who should we bring on? He was like, first and foremost, my boy, Koo. Right. So we would just look out for each other. And we just, after we finished that Norman Lear tour, the Declare Yourself tour, where we traveled, you know, registered 1 million voters, traveling and touring with the original copy of the Declaration of Independence. It was a voting tour. And by that point, we just felt like, yo, we love working together. Let's just formalize our work. Like, let's announce kind of our partnership to the world. And so we did this show we called the 2-Man, 1-Man show. And it was supposed to be just him do a poem. He does a poem, I do a poem, we do a group piece. But he and I just have this insane work ethic and creative energy. And as soon as we sit down, we start adding all kinds of craziness to it. And next thing you know, it ended up being this like 90-minute show that had dancers, you know, tap dancers that jumped out from the audience, and formal modern dancers, and a 9-piece alternative band that included things like a beatboxer and a harpist and somebody playing the glasses and film. And like, it was just this massive thing. And a director was there who had been a director of the Center Theater Group here. And he was like, yo, that was an amazing show. I think that could actually be a cool play. So then suddenly we spent 2.5 years of our lives really crafting out this spoken word play that ultimately became The Word Begins, which you remember, I think, you know, me coming out to DC and doing that, which is where we premiered it in Shirlington, Virginia. And so like that really, all of that was the beginning of our journey. But in parallel, I had been working with Nike and working with some other clients and just looking for how it is that I can monetize spoken word.
Pause, question.
Yeah.
Pause. I have been working with Nike. How, dude? How, you know what I'm saying? You can't just be like, and I was, no, pause. Because that goes to another one of my questions. I want to know, you've been on MSNBC, Showtime, MTV, BET. I've seen you on some commercials. How? You want to tell us one of these instances of how that happened? How, dude? How?
Well, I have no ego around giving it up to people that helped to pave opportunities for me. You know, like I said, with Steve, we were the first poets on the tour, but I was on it because he brought me in, right? Same thing with Nike. Nike was doing there was a film, what was it called? Battlegrounds. Nike had a clothing line, a street ball line of clothing called Battlegrounds. And they had this tournament that they did for King of the Court in New York and Chicago and LA and all kind of around the country. And so they partnered with MTV to create this documentary film called Battlegrounds about street ball, the power of street ball and this competition. And poetry, you know, poetry from Poetry Lounge, right?
Yeah.
So Poetry, his brother worked for Wyden Kennedy, which was Nike's ad agency. His name is Jimmy, and Jimmy had this idea of having a spoken word poet narrate this film with all these different poems, and so it basically be like poems like in the spirit of war, like war poems, right? All about like almost like calling the general calling the soldiers to arms, like that kind of stuff, right? And so they were looking for somebody, and Poetry reached out to me and was like, yo, they're looking for somebody. And I think I auditioned or I submitted something or whatever, and I got selected for it. And so again, like there's the opportunity, and this is what I want poets to hear. There's the opportunity, and then there's what you do with it, right? And this is where artists fall off, right? When I won the National Poetry Slam Championship, the very next thing I did when I came home and I woke up that morning was I started writing a press release. I didn't have a publicist. I didn't know how to write a press release. I was just like, I just don't want this to be a story in my life. This is a pivotal moment, and I want to use it to flip it, right? To turn one opportunity into 3, into 7. Same thing when I did Deaf Poetry. Everybody was acting like Deaf Poetry was going to be the end all be all of their careers. Once you become a deaf poet, oh, you made it, baby. You in there. I was like, no. Like, you will be forgotten as quickly as you were on there if you don't do something to use that to catapult you into something else. So each time I was always like going, how is it that I can take this and use it to create more opportunity? And the same thing happened with Nike, where I was doing some battleground performances at some of the games locally. They have they'd be these big celebrity driven games, and everybody would be there, and I'd perform a piece on the court before the tournament would begin. And then one of the reps from Nike was like, hey, that's a dope piece, that main Battlegrounds poem. Why don't you come to the Nike headquarters and perform that at one of our meetings?
Nice.
And so everybody was like, tennis got up there and they had their PowerPoint slide, and soccer got up there and they had their PowerPoint slide. And suddenly Battlegrounds turn comes up, and I jump up on the audience and I'm like, I want soldiers, and I'm doing this thing, and everybody's like all blown away. And it was a huge hit. I made them look super great. And the light bulb went off and was like, this is sort of an uncharted terrain that you can pick open for spoken word in the business world and do it in a way that other people haven't been doing it. And that's when I just began constantly doing work at Nike. I began, again, building my contacts, working those relationships. But the last thing I'll say about that is, because this is a really pivotal moment, what led to me being able to create Poetic Voice as a speaking category, there were 2 challenges that I was facing. One, I was facing the challenge of perceived value. This is one of my biggest challenges with spoken word, is that it has a low perceived value. So I don't know how many times I've done a TV show where everybody got paid but the poet, and the poets did it for exposure. Why? Because there is no industry, there's no agents, there's no unions, there's nobody out there fighting and protecting for us, right? The show would be about poetry. And the poets would be the only ones that didn't get paid. And so same thing in the business world. And so I was always trying to build up a stronger perceived value. And I was trying to show them that this is not just entertainment, because their mentality was, oh, he's dope for the Christmas party. He's dope for the fashion show, but not at our senior leadership meeting, not at this business meeting when we need to impart real value. And I was like, you're wrong. This art form is extremely malleable and dense, and it can house inspirational and entertainment content and educational content. We do it every day at the open mics. We just change the topic and we can go, we can talk about cybersecurity, or we can talk about healthcare, or whatever. This art form has the power to do that. And it wasn't until I kept getting booked at entertainment stuff for Nike. It wasn't until I finally, shout out to Trevor Edwards, at one of the ex-execs at Nike, and he booked me for the analyst meeting. And the analyst meeting is a company's one of their most important meetings. It's when the press, the financial press world, is sort of establishing their value. And afterwards, I did this piece that sort of went on to become almost like iconic in Nike history. And afterwards, they were like, "Oh my God, these analysts are applauding. They've never applauded, even for our celebrities." And then that's when suddenly finance was calling me, and brand ambassadors were calling me PR, and everybody was like, this is good for business too. And that became the real pivoting point that allowed me to then go create the speaking category called Poetic Voice.
Awesome. So how does your writing differ from like when I met you at Mango's 2 decades ago? How does that writing change from writing for let me see, Mango's could hold about 60 people really, and it's like 100 of us in there because stuff like this, right? Mm-hmm. But now you're writing for thousands of people. How does that writing process change?
Well, it's not so much the size of the audience that changes the writing, but it's the business world, right? We know this. You got, companies on the left, companies on the right. You got companies that are real edgy and the CEOs get up there and shit, fuck, and other companies that are just like super straight and narrow and, suited and booted. And so I had to learn how to navigate that in my writing. And honestly, two of the best training grounds that I had for that, and I always give props to this, is Slam and the Declare Yourself voting tour I did. Slam, because you had to Slam took your poetry and added strategy, right? It wasn't just about, I feel like doing this poem. I'm depressed and I feel like doing my depression suicide poem. Now you got to go, is the depression suicide poem going to get me 10s? And if it's not, I need to pull something else out my ass, right? And maybe I'm noticing that this crowd loves love poems. And so I'm going to do another love poem. Or strategically, I'm going to counter that because everybody's doing love poems with a breakup poem or whatever it is, right? But you had a strategic component in terms of how to convert an audience and how to win them over. And you weren't being judged by poetry experts. You were being judged by some dude that just came there to watch the game and a scorecard was thrown in his hand. So he's already a hater and you got to impress him to make him throw up a 10. So that was one of the components that really helped to teach me the strategy. And then the Declare Yourself tour was a nonpartisan tour. And that was extremely difficult. Poets are not nonpartisan. We tell you exactly what we feel, who you need to vote for, what our issues are, et cetera, et cetera. And Norman was like, no, this is a nonpartisan tour. So you can't tell them who to vote for. You can't tell them what to do, which issue to sway them one way or another on the issue. But that doesn't mean that you don't get to murder the mic. That doesn't mean that you don't get to kill it on stage. I want you getting them on their feet, swearing to everything that they believe in. So that was a hard goal, right? And we had to learn how to find the middle. And it was 6 poets eventually on that tour. So we all had different relationships to voting and politics and so forth. So we all had to really learn to find our common voice and to find where it is that we met each other, and how to meet someone in the middle and pull them over to where it is that you might want them to go. And both of those two things were skills that then showed up and helped me in the business world. Because now, number one, look, I'm a black dude. I'm a black dude with dreadlocks. I'm a black dude with dreadlocks who's a poet and an MC. Like, I'm not corporate America at all. So when I come up on stage, I already got all that working against me. But honestly, probably with all of that, the hardest thing I had working against me was the word poet, because everybody was like, oh, Jesus.
Wow.
All they think about was that poetry slam that their 7th grader made them sit through at their middle school that was horrible. And they were just like, oh, we don't feel like sitting and listening to this at our senior leadership meeting. And so I was always having to go in and convert that audience. And they'd come in thinking they were going to hate it, and they leave going, oh my God, I've never experienced anything like that. Those were some of the things that really helped me in the business world to be able to be successful in what it is that I'm doing now.
So when people come up to you and they say, nice to meet you, you say, I'm Sekou Andrews. And they say, what do you do for a living? What do you say?
I say I'm a poetic voice, which is a new category of speaking that I created that blends inspirational speaking and spoken word poetry.
Come on, elevator speech. Come on, speech. This is what I be trying to say. See, all of my people that are watching in my workshops, when I try to teach you how to do an elevator speech, this is the perfect example of what I say, because that is going to make me say, what is that? What does that mean exactly? Like, what is the poetic voice? Like, what, you know, that's going to make me want to engage more and find out more about you.
And there's 3 aspects of that. I'm a poetic voice, and I could stop there, but I already know that and they always do one of 2 things. They think that they know what it means, and they go, oh yeah, very cool. And I'm like, you have no idea what that is, because you're thinking, if I say it to 10 different people, they all see 10 different things. Mm-hmm. But if I then follow up, because a lot of people go, oh, what is that, right? So I create intrigue by saying the title, because I created this title. So I know the world doesn't know what it is, but I also specifically created the title to use 2 words that people do have somewhat of an understanding. So when I say poetic and say voice, that gives them a little bit of an entrance into the world that I'm in, right? And then I follow up with, this is a new category of speaking that I created that seamlessly blends inspirational speaking and spoken word poetry. So now that becomes the definition. But the final component of your elevator speech is the what's in it for me component. And a lot of times that should be what comes first, right? So then I might say something like, so imagine Hamilton meets a TED Talk, where I use art and entertainment and strategy and takeaways to create a transformational experience with an audience that helps them to see a better version of themselves and then live into it. Mm-hmm. Right. So now that's the sort of, this is how it would be valuable to me. If you don't add that part, then all you're doing is just sort of giving a definition for something that they don't take personal or they don't internalize. But the moment that you add how it is that it can impact their life, now you got them.
Yes. Come on, teaching us. So since you're teaching us, let me say, I did your free stage mic. I don't know what to call it. You gave it to us.
How to engage on any digital stage.
Yes. And that's just the free training that I've done. So I mean, we've talked about you being a poet. So let's talk about your platform now, right? Yep. So I was online. I saw one of your ads came up, on Facebook, and I said, "What is this?" So, and this is the time when we are, of course, because we're not live now. We are live, right, but we're not in person, right? So we have been sitting. I'm sitting here by my desk and about my books and everything, and people have been using Zoom for meetings. So I had a Zoom account, but I was using it for conference calls, right? Before we had to be digital, right, because we're in a pandemic. Right. So I saw this online, and I saw your promo talking about nobody wants to do, we don't want to be on no more conference calls. We don't want to do it because I think being on Zoom already puts you in the mind state of work, like corporate work, right? You're not thinking about the performance aspects of what Zoom can do, right? Yeah. Already. So you're sitting down in your chair. And then I looked at this one, I think I told you this already, but I looked at the training, the free one, right? And I'm like, okay, so any stage, any place, I can create my own stage. This is what I took from this. I can create my own stage. I can get my own lighting. I can perform. I did this maybe like on a Tuesday. I had a show on Friday, and I got my lights together. My mom was like, "What do you want for your birthday?" I was like, "I need some lights," because Sekou say you need to put some lights on you. Everything. I put on a whole full get up, right? I got on my whole eyeshadow. And, wear just my lip gloss, really. Put on some nice earrings. I had the whole I had my whole African attire on, right? So when it came time for me, we're sitting down, like we're doing this interview, and the other poets were like sitting down at their desk, but me, I'm standing up now, right? Because I'm like, I have created a space for me. So now I am standing up. Now I'm performing, and I felt that night like I actually had a real show. Yeah. Like this was a real performance. I created that stage. So this is what I took from this. So let's talk more about this and tell people how they can not just take the free one. Listen, I got that much from free and got paid. Let's talk about what this is and what you're teaching people and where we can get it.
Word. So the free training that she's talking about is called How to Engage on Any Digital Stage. And this was basically just my gift to the world because everybody was lowering their standards of presentations when everything went virtual in the pandemic. And I don't accept that, right? My motto is the motto of my Stage Mic curriculum is a stage is a stage is a stage, period, right? You don't sit back and go, oh, I can achieve this on one stage, but I can't achieve this on another stage. You simply have to modify the techniques that you use to achieve it. And so at the very beginning, so what was happening was I was having a lot of my actual clients were coming to me going, yeah, well, don't expect this. And, they're not going to be in the chat and don't expect them to respond. And we're just going to have to let them turn their cameras off. And I was like, what? You guys brought me in to kill it. And now you're killing every way that I can kill it because you're not turning on the chat. You're not going to have them turn on their cameras. I was like, I don't believe that. Right? I don't believe in that, I should say, right? My thing is a stage is a stage is a stage. I expect a standing ovation. I expect cheers and tears, even on a Zoom call, even in a Zoom conference, right? And so I had to like retrain my my clients. I had to do what I call possibility training and get them to reclaim the same possibilities that they had at the live event. Because at the live event, they would have never done that. At the live event, they would have been like, yeah, we're hoping that you can get them on their feet and we're hoping that you can so-and-so. And they would have had the tech crew there that would make sure that the lighting was right. And they would have had the sound crew there that would make sure that the sound was right. And they would have had the stage decorated and aesthetics and all of that. But they removed all of that from their virtual presentations. And so that was why I basically did the How to Engage on Any Digital Stage, just remind people, you got to be the sound crew now. You got to be the tech crew. You got to be the visual crew. You got to decorate your stage. You got to know how to work your audience. You got to use proximity. You want to make sure you create distance. You want to create intimacy with your audience. You got to make sure that you can do things that, just play with your audience. You know what I mean? Do silly stuff. Like you have the ability to do that the same way that you would on a live stage. You don't have to just sit here and be a dead talking head. And so that came from what is my bigger program, which is Stage Might, as in stage fright to stage might. And stage might is basically teaching you to be mighty on any stage that you touch by learning the techniques of performers, right? So it was basically, I didn't want to be a speaker trainer because I felt like there's a million of them out there. I don't need to create that program. But I kept getting people asking me, how do you do that? Like, how did you speak to an audience of 10,000 and I was in the back row and you made me feel like you were speaking just to me? How did you create that intimacy? Or how did you, end up taking this dead sort of, cyber tech crew at 8 a.m. of the high level executives and getting them doing something silly on their feet or making them cry? And I realized that I had a successful speaking career, but I'd never been trained as a speaker. All of my training was performance training. I've been trained in acting and improv and music and songwriting and all of these other things, right? My mother was a dancer. My father was a visual artist. I had this art training inside of me for the entirety of my life. But instead of just using it to be a performer, I was also using it to be a speaker. And I was like, that is different. There are speaker training systems that will take a technique from an actor, or they might base their whole thing on acting. But there wasn't a system that I saw that was comprehensive that said performance in all of its forms is what we're going to teach. And we're going to help you to be a better dentist, a better lawyer, a better executive, a better teacher, a better whatever, social media influencer, whatever it is that you want to be. We're going to make you better at that and make you mightier at that by teaching you the performance techniques of rock star performers. And so that's really what Stage Might is about. And so I have an online e-course that's 5 modules. It's rich with all kinds of content. It teaches you techniques of improv artists. It teaches you, things like how to memorize content quickly and easily, how to own any stage and be distraction proof like an improv artist, how to tell stories with your body and become your story and your physicality, how to feel natural in your skin, all these different techniques. And I use specific techniques from different artists. I have some world famous artists that send in videos of some of their rituals that they do. I have guest interviews with people that live in both business world and the performance world in some way. So it's a very rich course. And then sometimes I do my virtual VIP trainings where it's just me with, usually it's a higher level executive because of the price point. But that's where I do one-on-one training virtually or in person with a person that wants to, like, let's say somebody at Apple or something wants to become a better HR leader. I may do training with them to help them to really step into their sort of inspirational leadership. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where Stage Might came from. And it was a business goal for me because I wanted to be able to create passive income. I wanted to be able to create a platform that was sellable also. But it's also a passion place for me because it brought me back to the classroom. And I always maintained a commitment to being a teacher. And I find that I love teaching. That's why I did that free training. It was like, let me just get out there and teach people to be better. I love that. So it's a passion place for me as well. So you can go to getstagemight.com. Sorry, let me make sure I put my marketing hat on also.
Yeah,
we
already there you go. It's there.
It's there.
Get Stage Might. You don't see it? I see it.
What am I looking at?
Oh, it should be right across your screen.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Sorry, I was looking at the chat box.
Oh, no, it's highlighted on the screen because I want everybody to see it.
Word, yeah, getstagemight.com. So go to that, check out the e-course, and let me know how valuable it was for you. I've had people that have taken just the first 20 minutes of it or the first course or whatever, and then went to apply it to a speech that they gave, and they got their first standing ovation, and they were just like mind blown. So definitely, can work. It just forces you to transform your thinking that you are not just a speaker, that you can be inspiring, and that you are a performer, and you want to perform at your best on stage, and most importantly, that you are mightier than your mistakes. You are mightier than your mistakes. So don't allow your mistakes to beat you down and think, oh, I can't reach people. No, get up there and get mighty.
Yeah, that's amazing because I think this is not just for you're saying perform, but it's not just for a performer. It is for people who want to do keynote speeches, and will help you with if you're the trainer of things. This will help you make the training not boring. You know what I mean?
Right.
And being a performance poet, this will definitely help you as well. All the poets that's watching. So is there a certain time that we can start this? Does the course happen at any time or anytime? Okay.
It's an online course. You take at your speed, you get lifetime access to it. So we have people that, took it, that purchased it 5 years ago, an earlier version of it. And, they maybe only got through the first 3 modules, but then all of a sudden they got a promotion or they went into a new job and suddenly they have to speak more one-to-many. And they have to, they needed to up-level their communication skills and their voice. So they went back and finished the course. They still have that lifetime access. So yeah, you can take it anytime, learn at your own pace, learn on your phone, learn on your computer, et cetera, et cetera. And we just transitioned it into a new platform and upgraded it. So it's an even better course than it was originally. Wow. So yeah, definitely check it out. And then if you want, if anybody's looking for a deeper investment and wants like one-on-one training, then you can definitely reach out to me. Go to my website, SekouAndrews.com, and reach out to me, and my team will connect with you and let you know pricing on that as well. And then just in general, just join my tribe at SekouAndrews.com because I'm always sending out tips. I'm going to even be sending more stuff out over the rest of this year. Basically, like we're doing a revamp of our marketing efforts, and so we'll be sending out tips and strategies, inspirational content, video clips. So if you're still on the fence and you kind of want to just see what I'm about, join the tribe, and let us keep inspiring you.
Yes. So you do so much with this whole writing thing. Do you have any other talents other than in writing?
Huh. I mean, you mean other than writing and performing?
Other than writing and performing, because we've been talking about that. See, I'm on here with people and they're like, oh yeah, and I play the tuba. So I just want to know.
I mean, I do music production, although I produced all my albums up until this very last one, the one I did with the string theory, which was with neoclassical orchestra. But up until then, my albums were produced by me. So there's music production. I am a martial artist.
See?
What else? Talents. I don't know. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's it.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah, the writing takes up so many different forms. The song in my life, it's been playwriting, it's been songwriting, it's been TV treatment writing, it's been I'm working on a book right now about how to harness the power of inspiration and how you can be inspiring people, letting people know that they can be inspiring and not think of inspiration as something that's outside of themselves. So, the book writing and the performance, the poetry writing, like it shows up in a lot of different ways, the way I use my pen. So that probably is where my talents have been honed and focused most. But I love music. I'm missing music. I'm trying to. I basically have one more week of craziness in my life, and then I sort of slow down for the summer. And I'm looking forward to just like working on my next album, which is going to be fire. It's going to be hot. I can't wait to get to it. And yeah, it's just that creative energy, man. It shows up in a lot of different places. I draw a little bit,
See, you just look at all the stuff. Look at all the things, because I think some of these things inspire us to be better writers. Like those certain things, like especially if you have like if you produce and you have a musical background, you can hear your rhythm and your poetry. So that also contributes to that. Everybody is not as fly as you, Sekou. That's what I'm trying to say.
Everybody is as fly as they are.
They're as fly as they are.
You are as fly as you, and can't nobody be flyer than you. Can't nobody do a flyer you than you is the thing.
This is the truth. This is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So, you're married, and you have a child now.
Yep.
So, have you written any poetry? You wrote for the wife. Are you writing the poetry? Now you're writing the daddy poetry yet?
So I know that when that floodgate opens, I'm not going to be able to close it. I used to joke with my wife that I need to hurry up and get some more poetry out about her, because when our baby's born, I'm going to be writing nothing but baby poetry. But our baby was born in the middle of a pandemic. So I had to go into save the company mode. I'm in the live events business. So I'm like Vegas. We got hit the hardest, right? My calendar, I remember it like it was yesterday, March of 2020. Like in a week, it was just hundreds of thousands of dollars flying off of my calendar. Just boom, cancel, move, cancel. We were just like, oh snap, like panic, run for the hills. But I've always been like, roll up my sleeves and innovate and be creative and don't stick my head in the sand. Like, the strategy, the slam poet in me. All right, this is not going to work. What we doing? Like that's my mentality. And so I had to go into save the company mode. I have a staff and contractors I work with, and, I was putting food on people's tables. So unfortunately, a lot of my writing suffered. It makes me sad that I didn't get out as much writing in that initial period as I was hoping to. But now that we're kind of on the other side of it, like I said, this is sort of the end this week. This coming week is sort of the end of my May Madness and this crazy beginning of the year that we've had to sort of make up for last year. And I'm intentionally forcing myself to slow down, as in like not accepting bookings, as in focusing on well-being, focusing on family. I'm pulling off my calendar a bit and just making a real sort of bold, kind of scary, but exciting choice to make sure I stay balanced. It's not about just chasing the dollar. It's about making sure that I'm doing things that are that are purposeful for me, and doing the social justice things and the nonprofit things and the entertainment things and then also just spending time with my baby and spending time with my family. And so I'm looking forward to being able to have the mental space now to start getting back to more of that personal writing now that we're kind of on the other side of the, pandemic panic.
I couldn't imagine being in the seat that you were in, having a staff and having to think about other people other than just your household. Yeah. I can imagine that, because I know even this platform, this is how we got started, because it was because of the pandemic. And, I had a 3-year term as the poet laureate. Had I said, I had of course a full calendar. In March is Women's History Month. April is Poetry Month. And those months were, all busy for me, right? Being the first Black female poet laureate and all that. And I too watched everything go out of the window and said, well, let's get busy. You know what I mean? I made one post and I said, hey, what do we have to do? Do I have to do all the platforms virtually? And then I got hit up by these awesome 3 ladies who are on here with me all at the same time. And other people hit me up too, but they were the ones who were like, can we have a meeting tonight? We talked tonight. Right. And we got on and we was like, what are we trying to do? And we said, because, during this time, somebody said, we got to keep the mic on. That's how the name.
Okay.
And we all had different platforms. So we decided to bring all of that together. And it's been amazing. And I did another poetry open mic. Right. With Laura DeFranco, and was able to collaborate with on some things, and basically had to keep it moving. I was like, okay, we're virtual now. We're gonna do everything virtual, and and I have done a lot of work. This virtual work is actually more difficult to do than being on the stage. That's going there, leaving myself, and coming home, because you're there, like at home. And everything else is happening around home. So it's not as easy as people think. When I'm hosting for Busboys, like when I'm hosting, I have to be on with the people the entire time. That's more work. Usually when I go up, I say, next up, Sekou, down, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So it's more work being virtual than it is. So I am definitely looking forward. I'm not trying to drop the virtual platform, because I was going to ask is, do you think that poetry is contributing to the world, that the websites and social media is contributing to the well-being of poetry? And I think you answered that in some way already.
Do I think that social media is contributing to the well-being of poetry? Is that the question?
Yeah.
You mean specifically as a response to the pandemic? Or you mean just in general?
No, in general.
Yeah. I mean, I think that social media and just all digital platforms are platforms, and the most important thing is that poets continue to have a place to have their voice heard. Again, the reason why I focused on monetization and perceived value was because if you look at my company and my success and those kinds of things, and you put those up against my social media followers, people look at my social media followers and go, damn, I thought your brand was all big, but you only got 4,000 of this or 8,000 of that or 10,000 of that, right? You don't have these big million viral videos and so forth. Because people's perception of success is, how do you look online, right? And I know a whole lot of folks that have amazing lives online, and they broke and they struggling and they everything, you know what I mean? But you can put that perception out there, and spoken word just has this low perceived value. So what I recognized was, if I focus on trying to get a million views on this video, it will, if I'm trying to build a model where poets can get paid what they deserve to get paid to perform their work on a stage, just focusing on these million hits will turn into 100 offers for gigs at $50 to $500 each, right? I was like, that's the problem, is that, yeah, I know a lot of poets that like they put their work out there, they had a whole bunch of stuff, but whenever somebody went to hire them, it was always like, yeah, you should be happy with this $50. You should be happy with this $250 or this $500. And it didn't matter for me when I started going into the business world. It would be the $1 billion company that still was like, you should be happy with this. And I was like, y'all got the money. In the meantime, I'm looking at the speaker who went after me, and he flew in first class, and he's sitting at the front table, hobnobbing over drinks with the CEO. But they got me, flying in on bootleg airline and sitting on the floor backstage with the DJ, and they introduced me in some crazy way, like #1 street poet, as if they just found me on the street, and they found some photo of me that they put on the website from like some slam in '98, and I was like, yo. There is a huge disconnect. No wonder that people perceive the poetry in this way, because we're allowing them to present us in this way. So that was when I went and I changed all of my contracts. I changed all of my marketing. I changed my website, and it all began to be about, you will respect the value that I bring and you will pay me accordingly. And so I began to just incrementally build my value up. But I had to fight for that. And sometimes it still is a fight, even with all my credits. But I think, going back to your question, that's the way that I look at social media is, to me, some people look at it like, oh, if I want to be successful, I've got to get my Facebook followers up. And I wanted to break that. I was like, if you want to be successful, buy your house off of poetry. I don't care how many followers you got. You know what I mean? Like, raise your kids off of poetry alone. That's success. Doesn't matter if you got a bunch of Facebook followers or not. Now, we do live in a world where you can, increasingly more and more now, you can monetize those followers. So I don't take anything away from people who are monetizing their followers and their fan base. But that's still a business skill. It's not just you build it and they will come. You still have to learn how to build your brand in order to make your brand attractive for you to be able to monetize it, even if you're monetizing your YouTube page or your IG page, or you're becoming an influencer. So, there's lots of different paths, and there's way more paths now than there were when I was coming up. But that was my big thing, was like, nah, I don't want 100 gigs at $50 each. I want 1 gig at $50,000. Right. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, that's definitely what my assistant, shout out to Keisha, was saying. This is going to be the year of get paid more, do that shows. You know what I mean? Because I'm the one that said yes to everything. You know what I mean? And be tired. I said yes to everything. And when I first got this poet laureate title, I know she sent me my calendar, and she said, "Look at your calendar. When are you going to rest? And even thinking back to last April and the first April when I was the poet laureate, and then this April, now I had 4 days. This April, I had 4 free days in April, and they weren't even back to back. They were, you know what I mean? I was like, That's
painful. That's painful.
I'm still doing it. Yeah, it is.
It's a double-edged sword, because it's a blessing. You know what I mean? Like, work is work. It's a blessing, but like exactly the same reason why I was just saying, after this week, we literally put a freeze on all bookings. And when I told my team this, they looked at me like I was crazy, because we were just coming off of a year where we had to trim the budget a bit, right? And tighten the belt a bit. So they're looking at it like, all right, we finally got a bunch of work coming in. We're killing it again. Great, great, great. What? You're not accepting bookings? And it was just like, I realized I have been going nonstop for 2.5 years straight. Since the beginning of 2019, which was our best year ever, and that year involved me bringing on some new team members, expanding the team. Then all of a sudden I dropped the album with the string theory. Then all of a sudden we went into the Grammy campaign. Then we got the nomination. So that sent us into crazy campaigning, then followed right back. Literally the day after the Grammys, I flew off and had a whole bunch of speaking gigs. Then 2 months later, a pandemic. Then we're in Save the Company world. Then I have a baby right in the middle of all, you know what I mean? It was just like nonstop for 2.5 years. And I was like, and if I let it, it will be another 2.5 years of just fine, unless I start to take the reins. And so that is important for you as artists, as business people, to just remember, like, you have to make sure that you're taking care of your whole being, man. And you got to make sure that you're building your success in a healthy way that's sustainable for you. Otherwise, that's how you end up burnout, or you start reaching for drugs. Next thing you know, you're an addict because you're just trying to keep up the productivity, or like whatever it is. Like, Stay healthy.
Right. Because I mean, number one, your health is the number one thing that you need to take care of. Because if you're not healthy, then nothing else works.
That's it.
And then we have to keep remembering that family is the most important, you know.
Amen.
And I know I had this supervisor, and now I'm thinking about, you know, what he used to say to me back in my 20s, you know, when I met my husband in my 20s, you know what I mean? Long time ago. And I had this supervisor, and I realized now how awesome he was, right? So I was his executive assistant back in the day, right? He's the president of the company. And, you know, he would call me on a Friday and be like, go home, KaNikki, right? I'm still at work. And then he was like, I'm leaving. You know why, KaNikki? I'm like, why? Because I'm the boss, right? He used to say that all the time. And then he used to tell me, be the boss, KaNikki. Now I'm his executive assistant at the time. I wasn't thinking about being a boss, but he's telling me. And then he would always tell me, family is the most important. Family is the most important, like drilling that to me, right? Because you get so hard on your grind. And I think at the time he was 65. Yeah, you're the president of the company. However, what happened? He lost a lot, like with his daughter, you know, like with his family, he lost a lot of family time. So I think that's why he was trying to instill that into me. You know what I'm saying? Be the boss, because when you're the boss, you can go home. You know what I'm saying? You know, I'm at work, but you can go home. I always say that. So now I was like, I finally get what he means. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I work in HR, and I always tell people who don't want to take off work, you know, they're sick, I don't want to have this surgery, or my partner's sick, whatever. I always say family is the most important. That's family, because like you're replaceable at this job, you're not replaceable in your home. You know what I mean? And I mean, and even as an artist, you have to think like that too, because you know, if you're dead, somebody else will be the best spoken word poet. You know what I'm saying? Somebody else is gonna do it, and you'll be dead. You know, so you really do have to take care of your health. Self-care is the number one thing that you need to focus on, because if you're not healthy, it does not work. It does not work.
Absolutely.
Definitely. So yeah, I'm gonna be the one, and drink water, because water make you sexy. That's what my husband said.
Well, you see me over here, huh?
Yes, with the water.
Hydrate.
Yes. So I asked this of all the artists that I bring on here. I want you to think about people in your instance, organizations, venues. I want you to think of that. No shade to nobody, right? Mm-hmm. Just think of 3 people, organizations, venues, hostess that hosted you the best. They had your water ready. You weren't sitting in the back with your backpack with the DJ. They had a table for you. They put the right picture up. They read the right bio. They had your money ready. You didn't have to keep calling. Who are these organizations? 3, just 3. I know it's hard. I know it's difficult.
Man, that is hard, because there's
so many. I know
so many. That's
why I said no shade to nobody, but and everybody, I'm only giving him 3, so it's not his fault that he didn't name it.
Right. And then there's like the ones that, you know, and what's that famous Maya Angelou quote? People, you know, will forget what you said and all that, but they'll remember how you made them feel.
Yeah.
And there's some that are coming up with the feeling, but I'm trying to rack my brain to go, what was that? You know, who was that client? You know? So if I split my worlds and I think about it from the organization standpoint, I would say what's funny is that one of them was the Texas. So many of my clients are like associations that are acronyms.
Yeah.
I be getting these acronyms confused. It's like the APA, the ASAT, and so you know. But I think it was the TCEA. I think it was the Texas. It was an educational association, Texas Computer Educational Association, and it was mainly just because they put me up in the presidential suite at a hotel. And it was my first time being in the presidential suite. Nice. I wasn't expecting it. And so, you know, that was like, wasn't anything necessarily other than that exceptional. But But it was like, I remember I did like a little Instagram video because I was like, Mama, I made it. I would say one of the others that's kind of similar to that is I had a couple of clients that chartered private jets to get me out there, and that's always really gratifying, when somebody wants you bad enough that if the flights don't work out, or I had a gig, let's say I'm doing I think there was one where I was East Coast that morning, and then flew straight from the stage, drove straight from the stage to the jet, hopped on the jet and flew to the West Coast to close out an event that same day. So that's always nice, that sense of like there's a sense of respect, like there's a sense of value, and that's what I was fighting for, right? Again, it wasn't like I'm better than everybody else. It was simply saying, if you just said that I killed it like everybody else, why is there not the same respect for the value that I'm providing? So I think that was one of those times was Intuit, which has been a really great client for me. Intuit is like QuickBooks and Quicken and TurboTax, and I've done a bunch of stuff for them. And a third one on the client side, God, there's so many. Was probably no, don't say that. Let's see here. I think, God, it's so many. Okay, I'm just gonna say randomly. Maybe it was HPE, Hewlett Packard, and it was one of those situations where like they sent a limo because the event was in Atlanta, so they sent a car service to pick up my mom who lives in Atlanta and drove her out so that she could see my presentation, her and my stepdad, and took care of me a lot during the presentation. So yeah, there've been a lot. I mean, there's so many. I'm gonna wake up tonight and be like, I should have said those three. And then on the poet side, I know I'm cheating because I'm splitting mine, but on the poet side, I would say, one of my favorite situations is shout out to Ingrid B-Side Entertainment, because when I first went out to Miami early in my career, and I did a week and a half long tour of Miami in the Miami area, Florida area in general. And Ingrid, I'd never met her, and she was like, okay, I'm doing a show. I think she had Melodramatic Mondays and Flow Fridays. Mm-hmm. And I had a bunch of shows in between. And she put me up with her DJ at the time for that Monday. And then I just kind of I was supposed to try to get some hotels and figure stuff out. But then she was like, you know what? Just stay here. Like, you can post up here this whole week. And so I was with her DJ, but then she drove me around to all my shows. Mm-hmm. And if you know Ingrid, she's all about her business, whatever. Now, granted, I just met her. We'd be driving to a show. She'd drive me to the show. Wasn't even her venue. She would work the table. She'd be like, okay, you get over there, you stand over there and take pictures and sign autographs, whatever. I'm gonna sell these CDs, whatever. Nice. I don't even know if she's taking my money or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even know this chick. But all of a sudden she's handling business. She's like, boom, boom, boom. Say, Sekou CDs. Okay, are you buying? No, you doing pictures? He's over there. Sweetie, you want CD? Okay, boom, here it is. Boom, it is. Okay, last call for CDs. Okay, we're done. Sekou, let's go to the next show. And then she would take me to venues that I hadn't even been featured at. And she would take me to another venue that night. She'll show up. Everybody knew her. She'd be like, this is Sekou. He's National Slam champion. He's touring. Throw him up. And I'd get another little mini feature, sell CDs, sometimes a third show that night. She'd bounce to a show and then come back. And we would just do it like that for the whole week. And after about a week and a half of that, Ingrid and I just became, friends for life. And so that was one of the times I just remember being really taken care of early in my career. And I've had a few other folks that have just hosted me and took care of me and really just made me feel completely comfortable. So yeah, shout out to everybody that has put it down for a poet.
Yeah. Shout out to everybody who put it down for a poet.
That's right.
So I'm gonna let you give us one more piece, and I'm gonna open up for my co-hostesses and anybody who has any questions. So I'm gonna give you the whole screen situation.
So I'm doing the piece now. Or I'm doing questions now.
You're doing one piece, and then we're gonna gather ourselves for some questions for you.
All right. So since we've been talking about all this poetry and platform stuff and all this business of poetry stuff, and just sort of trying to redefine what people's perception of poetry is, I thought this could be a fun one to to do for the closeout. You have to. It's a hard one to do without the music, because the last album that I did is called Sekou Andrews and the String Theory, and it was a collaboration with this 50-person neoclassical orchestra from Berlin and Sweden called the String Theory. Super, super dope project. Definitely check it out. You can stream it everywhere. And the last track, we basically wanted to sort of really push the envelope. You think classical music and think poetry, you think somebody up there like talking about daffodils while the cellist is like, and we were like, no, this album is epic. It's big. It's just got this massive soundtrack type feel. And we wanted to kind of push the boundaries of the music. And the last track was almost like, what if spoken word classical music did a rave? like meet spoken word classical music meets drum and bass. What would that feel like? And this is this sick ass track that PC, the conductor, came up with. And it's hard to do this piece without you just listening to the and it just goes crazy. But so imagine all that in your head, and the orchestra sort of taking off when I cue it up. This is called Poets Have Fun Too. I gotta read this one because I ain't done it in a minute. Okay. Poets have fun too. Revolution ain't all we come to. We get tired and we feel like being done too. We get freaky and we need to get us some too. That's right. Poets get wild too. Assholes in the movies getting loud too. Drinking, blazing, doing what the crowd do. Get a symphony turned up and riled too. Poets like to play too. We ain't always got a deep place to take you. We get dumb like it's your birthday too. Make noise for String Theory and say cool. Woo! Poets gotta eat too. Most times we spit to try to reach you. Sometimes we spit to try to teach you. But this time the shit we finna freak to dance. I'm sorry, not sorry. Do I love too loud for you? Is my future too now for you? Does it scare you how unapologetically I love me? That these diamonds in my eyes are conflict free? Was I supposed to RSVP to ask your permission to do me? No, I hope you don't mind my voice, because I'm going to voice my mind. So I'm sorry, not sorry. Is my version too updated for your hardware? Is my valuation too blockchain for your bank? Don't be vexed just because you expected your boxes to check me, but instead I made checks too large for your box. Shit, I never told you I can't inspire the world with a mojito in my hand. That's your glitch. Ha! Poets have fun too. We classical, but we stunt too. We get tired, we feel like being done too. We get freaky and we need to get us some too. That's right. Poets want to dance too. Hit the flow with a glass in my hands too. Might drop it to the flow, get the chance to. Might party around the globe, Berlin too, and Sweden too. Poets pay bills too. We cop cars and buy homes with skills too. We got stocks and feed kids with deals too. Don't get out of bed for less than a meal too. I'm playing. But poets gotta eat too. Most times we spit to try to reach you. Sometimes we spit to try to teach you, but this time the shit we've been a freak to dance. I'm sorry, not sorry. Does the cant in my conform violate your norm? Does the brash in my brass cause you stress? Are my trombones too trapped for your chest? Is my symphony too savage AF? Did you forget that every tradition was once innovation? Every convention was once called invention. So I'm sorry, not sorry. If you find it scandalous that we are violas and rhymes getting away with murder in this track, we pop one string on each of our cellos to give our string section a little pop. Replace the missing string on guitars with vocal cords so that our music always speaks to the lost. It's not our fault you forgot that we just as broken as you. just as perfect too. That every healing word we spit was first meant to mend our own fractures from bashing our heads against the lie of glass ceilings stained with sky. So we don't care if it's a tradition or a rule, a curse or a wall. We refuse to leave this life till we all break something. Ha! Poets have fun too. Deep shit ain't all we gonna come do. We get tired and we feel like being done too. We get freaky and we need to get us some too. Speak on it. Poets get lit too. Brass sections get the party hip too. Round here, quartets talk shit too. We put the gangster in orchestra with you. Let it breathe. Poets like to play too. We ain't always got a deep place to take you. Sometimes we got dumb shit to say too. Make noise for string theory and say cool. Woo! See, poets gotta eat too. Most times we spit to try to reach you. This time I ain't even trying to teach you. String theory, give me something I can freak to. Dance. Us poets have fun too.
Come on, I can feel it too. I can feel it.
Could you feel it? I was trying to represent the orchestra behind me.
I can feel it.
I felt all of that. I loved it. I love that. So, Sekou, you've already answered one question I ask everybody is how you are practicing self-care as we're coming out of the quarantine. So let me ask you this question, because you touched on it a little while ago in your conversation. You said people are always walking up to you asking you, how do you do this? Like, or I don't think I can do that. So I ask all artists, I love asking artists, we all know that you were not always this professional and this polished. So please tell us the story of the first time you took the stage to perform something and how you felt about it afterwards.
The first time I took the stage, like ever in life.
Ever in life.
Well,
he was probably 2.
Probably.
Right. Honestly, the first time I took the stage was in a play. I had moved I was born in the Bay Area, Northern California, Berkeley, and I moved from Berkeley up to DC, as you know, and did middle school and high school out in DC. Shout out Westland Middle School, shout out Georgetown Day and Duke Ellington. Those are the schools I went to. And when I was, I joined, this was when I feel like the misfit was born, because I left in the middle of the year. So this was like the worst grade to be the new kid. 7th grade. Oh my God, like kids are cruel, right? And then I was in the middle of the year in middle school, right? So I came like after Christmas. So everybody already had their cliques and their friends. And I was this funny dressing, funny talking kid from California who didn't fit in at all. And I remember doing a tour of the school, and what was once I used to tell this story and it'd be a beloved name, and now not so much. But Bill Cosby's cousin, a woman named Sharon Cosby, was the acting teacher there, and she was amazing. She was just a pure joy. She was hilarious, and she was passionate about the arts and teaching kids the arts. And she told me, I was touring the school, and she was like, "We getting ready to do The Wiz. So if you want to come audition, make sure you come audition." And I was like, "Oh, okay, sure, I'll come audition." Now, granted, I had never been in anything in my life, but this goes to show my mentality. Okay, you can see the hustler, I deserve to be here mentality that I have, because in middle school, keep in mind the movie The Wiz was out, right? And so if you were going to be anybody in The Wiz, who were you going to be? Michael Jackson, the Scarecrow, right? I'm like, I don't know. The Wiz was Michael Jackson as far as I was concerned, right? And so I auditioned. I didn't audition for The Wiz. I auditioned for the Scarecrow as far as I was concerned. And I was expecting to get the Scarecrow. And instead, I did not get cast as the Scarecrow. I got cast as the Lion. And I was pissed. I'm a major role in my very first audition of my very first play, and I get the Lion, and I am hot that I did not get the Scarecrow. And I had made one friend, and I remember that he looked at the list and he got cast, and he was like, "Dude, you're mad about the Lion? Like, I'm a munchkin that brings the queen on at the end, and you pissed off about the Lion?" And that was my entrance to performing, and I was hooked. I fell in love afterwards. And I don't have any memories of terror. I don't have any memories of, oh my God, it was so terrifying, and oh, I was so terrible and I had to work my way. I didn't have that experience. Like, I did The Lion and I suddenly got fame around the school as one of the actors, and I was like, this is what I want to do. And at the same time, I discovered hip hop, and I was like, yo, this hip hop thing is I'm loving this. And so I started forming the bands and, you know, performing. And so I was known as, I remember we did me and my boy from my hip hop band, we did a dance talent show where we danced to Oh Sheila, Ready for the World, Oh Sheila. You remember that? And we were like, and I never forget, we had this one move. I still remember to this day. We were like, oh, dun, dun, oh Sheila, oh Sheila. And we were like, oh, we thought it was the freshest thing ever. And all the girls came up to us afterwards like, oh, that move was fresh. So that was like, I belonged on the stage. You know what I'm saying? I belonged on the stage from that moment.
I love that. I love that. Just quick question from the chat is, like, are you writing for the new Black Wonder Years? That came from Big Homie.
Am I writing for the new Black Wonder Years? No.
Okay.
I don't know what that even is. I'm assuming maybe it's a revamp of the Wonder Years show, a Black version?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's dope. That's dope.
Yep.
No, I'm not writing for it. It's probably another Sekou. See, I told you, these damn Sekous are out there.
You're the only one I know.
That's right.
I can't even begin to tell that lie. I do know other Sekous, but there's only one Sekou Andrews, one Sekou the Misfit.
See, that's why we kept the Andrews right there. That reason.
Girl Genius, you had a question. You dropped it in the chat, and now that you're here.
No, I mean, I asked earlier when you were talking about martial arts, what type?
Oh, so I do Kung Fu. I started off with Taekwondo, like every little kid does. You know, you got to break the board, get your green belt, you know.
Yep.
And then when I moved to DC, actually, yeah. So I was doing Taekwondo actually, and when I was in Maryland, Silver Spring, and then we moved to DC. I found a really dope school out in DC. I don't even know if they're around anymore, but they were this black wushu kung fu school, and
probably they're probably still there.
That would be amazing. Actually, I have to look for them next time I go. The name is, I'm blanking on the name right now, but I'm sure it'll come back to me. But that was when I never forget, like I showed up and I was, you know, just touring it, and they were showing me how it worked. And I just felt like Taekwondo was so like strength against strength to me. And when I looked at Kung Fu, it was like they were dancing and kicking somebody's ass at the same time, you know? And it was so like use the person's energy against them and flow and all of that. And I thought it was really beautiful and dope. So I started doing wushu. And then when I came out to LA, I wasn't practicing for years, except just on my own. And then I discovered Sansu, which is a form of Kung Fu that is much more sort of, they call it dirty Kung Fu. Some people call it dirty Kung Fu because it's one of the few forms that kept its original war element. It didn't come over and get watered down by tournaments. You know, where it was like, yeah, you practice all these techniques, but then you put on a bunch of padding, and it's just about who can get the point fastest.
Exactly.
You know? Whereas Sansu was more like Krav Maga. You know, it's very self-defense oriented. Where it's like, I got in all, you know, wars, you got 100 people coming out at you, so you got to take out one person in 3 moves so you can get to the next person, and that's what Sansu is. So I love it, and I just love Kung Fu in general, and martial arts is the only thing I've ever loved to do with my body physically, like as athletically. I never did basketball. I mean, I took, you know, summer camp basketball or swimming or whatever, but I never really played sports recreationally. It was always martial arts.
I did it for a number of years, Taekwondo, and my, like, you have to know my house. I think I've seen every Kung Fu movie ever in the history of everdom. My mom actually taught for a number of years. She taught kids classes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So,
cool.
yeah. And that was her side gig. She ended up, like, you know, teaching Taekwondo and Hapkido and some other stuff. So I just always ask.
I love it.
The stuff with that. Yeah.
I incorporate martial arts.
Find that wushu school.
You said what?
I could probably find that wushu school.
If you find it, let me know. Dennis something. I told you it was going to come to me.
I like my brain knows it, and I just can't. I want to say it's still here.
It's Dennis something, wushu, kung fu. Let me know if you find it. But I still like
Google while we're talking.
I incorporate martial arts even into my keynotes, where I'm talking to people and I'll be telling them about, like, say with the pandemic, and I was talking about like how it is that we have to respond to things, and how it is that you can't necessarily meet force with force, and you need to be able to stay fluid. And part of resilience is being able to take a punch, right? And know that you can take a punch and know how to use that energy so that you can respond. So it definitely becomes a sort of philosophy of life,
Okay, I have one question from the chat. Wanted to know, let me look at it over here because I'm working on 2 devices. At what point in your career did you know that your price point for booking had to change?
Oh, it's been multiple points. You got to keep pressing your price point up. You're always trying to balance between the value add that you're bringing and what the market can bear. Right. And so you can't be the person that's out there like, I feel like I'm worth $100,000 every time I show up on the stage, if you don't have any evidence of you bringing that value. Right. And if the market can't bear it, like if I go to, like, I put it this way, my life used to be poetry venues. Right. So poetry venues are paying $50. They're paying $100. They're paying $250. Nowadays, it's a lot of Venmo and stuff like that. I'm not dealing with those types of fees anymore, right? So my speaking fees are exponentially higher, and that's how I built my business. So when I go do a poetry venue, I'm not going to them being like, if it ain't 5 figures, Sekou don't show up. You know what I mean? Like that the market in that spoken word world could not possibly bear it, and it's not necessarily needed for me. And so I think that's a big part of it, is knowing what the market bear, but also making sure that you are building that perceived value. The reason why I talked about the reason why I talked about focusing on perceived value was because nobody believed that spoken word had a value. So I was always having to kick every single door down. If you're a speaker, you're a keynote speaker, and you speak on tech, and people are looking for a keynote speaker on tech, well, great. What do you cost? $5,000, $10,000, $50,000? Great. We'll book you because we understand your industry. You belong here. But with spoken word, there was never a sense of you belong here. So I was always having to go and say, not only these are my fees, not only this is what I do, but also I have to convince you that I even belong. You know what I mean? And that has been, and sometimes continues to be, one of the biggest challenges. But what has made it easier is proof of concept, right? So the more evidence that I have, the more testimonials, the more websites, the more videos, the more quotes, the more speaker bureaus that I have, that are saying, yo, if you want the hottest thing out there right now, if you want this, the more people, evangelists that I nurture, that was a big part of my marketing. I stopped doing all the traditional marketing with one sheets and cold calls because nobody believes spoken word belongs. So I didn't get a foot in the door. So I started marketing through my evangelists, and I would take that ambassador, that Sekou ambassador that I just made look great for their company. And it would be like, yo, who can you refer me to? How can you, is there anybody else at your company that I can speak for? And they would be like, yo, I got the perfect person for you. I used to always say my career was built on 4 words. There is this guy, or there is this poet. You know what I mean? And those would be the 4 words. Somebody would call up and be like, yo, I know what you're thinking. There's this poet. I know. Take the call. And that went a long ways towards building that perceived value. And so my price points continue to change. From when I first started off, I was doing, like, when I was doing early work, again, we talk about more than a decade ago now. So obviously there's inflation, but it was like 2,000, 2,500, I'd be lucky to get, and I've just consistently raised it over the years. And now it's 10 times that, 20 times that, actually.
Ashe. See, somebody else said it's a masterclass on here.
Love to teach.
Every time.
Love to
teach. You definitely learning. I'm trying to see if I see any more questions.
And actually, you know what? Let me say this. I've been doing, there's 2 things that I'm going to be doing for those of y'all that are getting value out of this. I get asked to mentor a lot by perfect strangers. I've done mentoring for some folks, but sometimes it's just strangers, and obviously I don't have the bandwidth to mentor everyone. And so I'm going to start. This was an idea that we had started right before the pandemic, and then for obvious reasons we had to kind of shut it down and change focus. But we're going to be restarting these mentorship calls where I'll be doing this, kind of asking. It's almost like pick Sekou's brain. Ask me anything type calls. And then also there will be a podcast in my life soon. And I will be doing more stuff on Clubhouse. So if anybody is out there on Clubhouse, I will be doing a lot more about the business of being an artist, and the business of particularly of being a poet for folks. So if you guys are interested in that, again, make sure you join my tribe, sign up for my mailing list at SekouAndrews.com, and make sure you're following me on Clubhouse and all of that, and look out, because I'll be adding more of this value. Sorry, you had another question.
I was gonna say, I think number one, I think it's Dennis Brown.
Yeah, that's it. Yep. Wow, haven't heard that name in forever.
Exactly, it is Dennis Brown.
Are they still there?
Yeah, looks like it.
Oh wow, I gotta go back there. When I go back to DC, I definitely got to go back there. That's crazy.
Yep. If you Google it, it looks like it is still there. And somebody else might be running it now, but it is still there.
That's dope. Really dope.
And I was going to say, and secondly, I put this in the comments earlier, and I'll say this. Well, first of all, KaNikki, do we have any other questions?
Not that I can see.
I'll ask my normal last one if that's the case. But before that, I was going to say, I mentioned this in the comments earlier, but a lot of the training stuff. So I speech write for a living.
Oh, dope.
For this training stuff, I'm ready to hand this stuff to the people that I write speeches for. I literally have been looking for something just like this, not just me, but for like the people I write for, because a lot of them, like, they're really good at what they do, but they're totally not used to having to do speeches in things. And I'm like, and I can give them all the reading tips in the world, but I mean, yeah, this is going to be, I'm about to sit in a speech writing meeting tomorrow. Like, hey, can you watch this? Watch this. Please watch this. Please watch this.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Well, let me know how I can help with that. Because I feel you. And I don't speech write, sometimes for that reason. Like I've gotten people asking me, oh, could you just, write it? And I'm like, no, I speech write for myself. But I haven't really, again, I try to just go where my passion lies, not just where the money lies. And that's an area where it's like I've turned down big money, just kind of like, no, it's not something that interests me. But when I am doing one-on-one training, I will pick up the pen a little bit and help craft and tweak and change content. And what if you move this? And what if you started with this concept? And what if we rethread that and so forth? So when I am doing my virtual VIP sessions, they do get the benefit of the Sekou pen. And I've had people, again, get their first TED Talk standing ovations and things like that. But speech writing for other people, it is its own beast.
It is its own challenge. Most of the people I write for are I work for the government, so I write for kind of high up government folks, and they do what they do, and they are not writers by any stretch of the imagination, and that's fine.
Yeah.
That is literally.
Do they know they're not writers? Because that's what I get frustrated about, is when they think they're writers.
I've had it where they think they are writers. And want to insert things that I'm just like, no, that's bad. And I've had, ones where they recognize that I have this help. Let me go ahead and use it.
I had one of my, it's a common thing where, not too common, but common enough where, people, especially back when I was doing a lot more custom stuff. I built my business writing a lot of custom pieces for clients. Now I don't do that as much. But when you are doing a custom piece, they feel like they have ownership of it. And so they start going, what if you do this? And what if we tweak? And so I had to start setting up, just really clear rules. Like, you are not about to get my pen. I'm not handing my pen over to you. This is my piece that, you don't get to go, I think it should be yellow instead of canary. And, no, back off my pen, but I had one situation that was one of my most difficult clients ever, where They had complete respect for what I do. I wrote a piece that I love, my team loved it. They were like, this is gonna kill. And then late in the process, and this is one of the things that I had to learn, if anybody's in this kind of business, make sure you have all your decision makers at the table up front. Because one of the things that happened was, and I've learned from this, I had this happen years ago at Nike as well. But for some reason they didn't adhere to it. And basically the head of marketing, like the CMO, the big woman, she joined in on the process at the very end. And they were like, she basically just wanted to write this. And we had to kind of convince her to let you write it. And she basically just kept coming back with edits going, no, cut all that, say this instead, say that. And it was such an incredible insult and disrespect to my work that I was so ready to just cut ties with them and just be like, I'm done. I don't care. It's not worth the stress. It's not worth the money, all of that. So definitely like making sure that you're setting those boundaries is super important up front.
I pretty much, like, at least on my end, say, listen, you have free reign. I'm writing it. You can take it or leave it. You have free reign to use it or don't use it, except if I mark up certain things that I'm telling you, do not do this because you are not going to get me in trouble for writing this for you. Other than that, chop all you want, add all you want, do whatever you want to do with this. I'm good. I gave you the baseline. I'm giving you the follow script. Just go with it. Just don't do that one thing.
Exactly.
I have learned to just like, listen, you can add your own personal flair to this. Do what you got to do. Just don't do this one thing.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. When it's their speech, yeah, absolutely, it makes perfect sense. It's different when it's like, this is my speech and I'm saying it, and you all up in my ink.
Yeah, that part. None of this is like, if it's stuff for me, no, don't touch.
Yeah.
Wait, Sekou, you hit on a question. You hit on something I did want to ask you. So from the time that the contract is signed until you do the event, about how much time lag is there for you to prepare for this event, working for corporate?
So, like I said, I don't do as much custom writing. Like my keynotes are very customized. They have a very customized feel. There's still a lot of crafting, way more crafting that's involved in them than most speakers. But that has changed over the years. When I first started off and I was doing custom work, I might have a month to 2 months because I just wasn't as in demand. Then as things got super busy, there have been times when it's like, I've had a week, I've had a couple of days. Like there have been times when it's been insane. I would say typically when I'm doing a keynote, I probably have the shortest amount of time that I have might be 2 weeks. And that's happened a lot more in the pandemic, because one of the things that the pandemic affected is that people started booking a lot more last minute. It was a wild, wild west, and nobody knew, it was a virtual event. So you didn't have to book the hotel and all the travel a year and a half in advance. You could just sort of plan an event more last minute. So we were getting booked a lot more last minute. And so, typically I'll have maybe 2 weeks, but I have a lot of stuff on my calendar for, November, October, December, stuff like that. I'm not even turning my attention to that stuff right now because I have too much in the queue right now. But it varies a lot. I've done stuff. Strangely enough, that piece that I talked about that was iconic for Nike that ended up sort of working its way into the annals of Nike, archive. It's one of my most popular pieces. It's called Consumer 2.0. I do it to this day. I still use that in a ton of my speeches as a segment of a bigger speech. And I wrote that piece in about 24 hours. So, it's like sometimes your last minute muscle is super strong and your magic in the final hour. You know what I mean? And I've done pieces where I've done things in 24 hours, but it's brutal on me. And I had to start changing that and not making that a common occurrence. I tell you, one of the things that stopped me one of the things I used to get booked for a lot was a wrap up. And I don't like doing it, to be honest. Like somebody would say, okay, we want you to open the conference and then we want you to close it with a piece that you write about the conference, and you're going to sit during the conference for the 3 days, and then you're going to write a piece at the end and close out, and you're going to kind of talk about everything that everybody talked about. It's cool for singers. and it's cool for comedians because they can write little one-liners. And Bob said this, and KaNikki said that, and it's, but poets, we have such a structural integrity to our work that it would just be brutal on me. I'd finish the last, breakout session at 4:00 that day. I'd go up to my hotel room and I'd write all night, and I'd pull an all-nighter, and I would get no sleep. And then I'd go and deliver the piece to the client at 7 a.m. They go, okay, sounds great. And then I'd be on stage an hour later, and it was brutal. And then right afterwards, I hopped on a plane 2 times. Had that situation, went straight from the stage, finished, hopped on a plane right afterwards. And both times it was almost identical, the scenario that happened. I sat down in my seat. I was feeling a little weird as the plane was taking off. Got to the point where we could stand up and take our seatbelts off and everything. And let's say I was in row 5, and I stood up to go to the bathroom, and I blacked out, and I woke up on the floor with everybody freaked out and surrounding me, and threatening to land the plane and so forth. And I was like, what the hell happened? They were like, you just blacked out and fell and hit the ground. And the second time it happened, I fell straight forward and busted my nose, and there was blood everywhere. And it was so embarrassing because there were a bunch of people that were on the flight from the event that I had done. So it was super embarrassing. And that's when I just realized, now, again, going back to self-care, you got to start taking better care of yourself. You can't do these all-nighters. Then you go on a plane in the altitude and no sleep. And this is a bad combination for you somehow. And that's also when I realized that my plane, that's when I started insisting my clients fly me out first class. I don't say that to stunt, right? I say that because when you spend enough time on planes, you realize travel becomes a part of your self-care. So you have to start standing up. I was always, we poets were humble. We don't stunt. So I was always the cat that, oh, that's fine. Oh, I don't need the first class flight. Oh, so-and-so. And then I was like, I get off a plane, my back's jacked up. I wasn't able to sleep. A kid was screaming at me. I go to a crappy hotel, and I'm doing this 3, 4, 5 times a week. No, I need to start insisting on that client helping me to take care of myself in better ways, because that's going to help me to deliver for them the value that they want to get from me. So it's all these lessons that you just learn over time. But again, going back to that price point question, you got to know your times. You know what I mean? Like, you can't be requesting first class, or you can't be requesting whatever, the grand 5-star treatment, if you haven't shown that you have reached that point that you're delivering that value for them. So you got to balance between ego and self-care and proper perceived value that you're creating. And it's a dance, and you keep checking in with yourself and keep going. Am I ready for the next level? Is it time for me to raise my fees? Sometimes it's time for me to lower my fees, and we had just raised our fees before the pandemic. Guess what? Right, them fees went back down a little bit, but it was also because we recognized, well, we're doing virtual, and the market for virtual has a different perceived value. So we were okay with that. I didn't have to travel. I wasn't away from my family. I didn't do it because I wasn't giving the same quality of service, though. Be clear. Mm-hmm. That was what I had to tell my clients. I'm still, a stage is a stage is a stage. I'm still going to get up here and kill it. I'm going to put the same amount of preparation that I did for you live. So I'm not giving you anything less. I'm not discounting this because I'm doing something less. I'm discounting it because I understand that the market has a different perception of the budgets that they can put into a virtual presentation. You might have had $10 million for your live presentation, for your live event, but you only got a $500,000 budget for your virtual event. So I get that I have to shift and adjust for the market, but be clear, it's not because I'm giving you something less. And then what we did was we also started to create enhanced presentations where we would go and do a lot more media and music and graphics and visual effects and pay a premium price for that. So that if you wanted to get it enhanced, that was an extra $25,000 on top of my fee just for the production value. So there were a lot of different things that we did to make sure that we stayed afloat during these times. And that's just how you have to continue to put on your business as an artist and entrepreneur.
Okay, that's that, man. I'm getting all of that.
I was like,
right, thank you.
Bravo.
Wait a second.
Thank you.
Let me stand up for that one.
What? It was all this that did it, though, huh? That was what did it right there.
I just want to say thank you so much, Sekou, for taking the time.
Definitely.
Not feeling the best, and still, coming on and giving us your all. I mean, I really appreciate this, and I know everybody that's looking and will be looking later will really appreciate this. So. Thank you so much.
I have people back-channeling me about how good this. I have people back-channeling me about
on my cell phone. Like, who is this dude? Like, I'm like,
they're like, yo, I'm watching this, and this is so good.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It was a pleasure. It's definitely good to see y'all again and to be up in your space. I appreciate you inviting me in, and it's always good for me to be able to share. And hopefully, this has been valuable for all of y'all out there. And keep following me. I'll keep inspiring and teaching.
All right.
The last one is always. The last one is always.
Last question.
The last one is always. Now that you've been here and you've met us and you know us and you've seen the show, who do you recommend that we bring on the show for any one of the 4 segments? Charity's not here, but segments. We have, art therapy. This segment, Sherry's is from behind the microphone, and mine is let's talk about the books of mostly authors.
So, Sherry's is what?
From behind the microphone. We just take really time to get to know the behind the poems. The person behind the poem.
Think behind the actor studio sort of thing.
Yeah. So when you said the art therapy, I thought of Thea Monnier. Thea is a poet out of LA. I don't know if you guys are familiar with her work, but that's been my little poetry sister for years, and she is a licensed therapist and does a lot of work with the intersection of spoken word and therapy.
Nice.
I would probably also recommend a cat named Lim Saint. Is actually a spoken word name. And he's got a podcast that I just did about fatherhood. And he's a poet. He actually poet started going to my church recently. I knew him from the LA scene, and then he showed up at my church, and we've been buddies ever since. And he's a cat that I've got on my radar in terms of I'm going to be starting to do some poetic voice training and create a poetic voice certification program in the future. And so he's one of the cats on my radar for that. I definitely, my partner Steve Connell. Again, that's just my number one go-to. I'm getting ready to go on a writing retreat with Steve this week, where we are working on our design for our group podcast. So you'll be seeing us kind of rekindling our group work. We haven't done stuff together in a while, but we just did an amazing video about Bloody Sunday and MLK, and we're doing the podcast and just about to start revamping some of our group work. So he'd definitely be a recommendation. And then probably Cat, Simply Cat.
He's definitely been on the list. Thank you. I'm glad because I've been thinking about July. So I will.
Yeah,
go ahead
that's my girl. That's my girl. She ran the Say Word program, which was the nonprofit teaching poetry curriculums in schools, and I became chairman of her board for Say Word, and so Say Word just recently dissolved or downsized, but she's still an amazing poet. She hosts Screen Time Slam on IG every Sunday night, and does her own spoken word work, and she consults. I've hired her as a consultant for my Stage Mic program and building our curriculum. So she's also somebody that's kind of, I think, could give some real great backstories, as well as like the intersection of spoken word and business.
Oh, I'm definitely going. Like I said, as soon as I'm done off this, I'm going to slide into her DMs.
Yeah.
Well, we want to thank everyone here for joining us. If this is your first time, especially because, again, this is only our second week streaming to YouTube, and you really want to get a sense of what all different of the 4 platforms are like, please come back next week. We do our quarterly roundtable when there's ever a 5th Sunday in the month. And our crew actually, we call ourselves a women-led artistic experience, but we do have a shadow male member who goes by the stage name of Analysis. So Analysis will be our roundtable interviewee next Sunday, right back out here at 7 p.m. You can subscribe to our website. We send you out who's featuring every week. And all of our platforms are at Keep the Mic on everything. We are at Keep the Mic On. So thank you. Please like and subscribe the video if you're on YouTube, because you know YouTube cares and we want YouTube to care. And we will be back next week. Thank you, everybody. Good night.